Genesis 48 recounts the story of Jacob, also known as Israel, blessing Joseph's two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. Here is a summary of the chapter. Before we start, we'd like to ask for your support. If you enjoy our video, please hit the like button. This will help us reach more people and create content for you. Now let's get started with today's video. The narrative of Genesis 48 is a touching and significant moment within the broader story of the patriarchs of Israel, specifically in the life of Jacob, Israel, and his descendants. This chapter focuses on the intimate moment when Jacob, near death, blesses his grandsons, Ephraim and Manasseh, the sons of Joseph. This event not only reflects Jacob's role as the bearer of God's covenantal promise, but also holds prophetic implications for the tribes that will later arise from his descendants. Let's explore this chapter in depth, breaking down its themes, actions, and historical significance. 1. Jacob's nearing death and Joseph's visit, verses 1 to 4. The chapter opens with the news that Jacob, also called Israel, now old and frail, is ill and nearing death. Joseph, his beloved son who has become a prominent leader in Egypt, hears of his father's condition. Wanting to honor his father and provide him comfort in his final days, Joseph takes his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, to visit Jacob. Jacob's relationship with Joseph has always been unique, filled with deep affection and a sense of divine purpose. Joseph was the firstborn of Rachel, Jacob's most beloved wife. Now, Joseph's visit with his sons marks an important family moment, but it also becomes a scene of great spiritual significance as Jacob prepares to pass on the covenantal blessing to the next generation. When Joseph arrives, Jacob gathers his strength. Although Jacob is weak and near death, the moment is spiritually charged, as Jacob becomes a conduit for the continuation of God's promises to Abraham, Isaac, and himself. Jacob recalls the covenant that God made with him at Luz, Bethel, many years earlier, reiterating God's promise to make him fruitful, multiply his descendants, and give them the land of Canaan as an everlasting possession. This memory is crucial. It frames Jacob's actions as those of a patriarch acting within the context of divine revelation. Jacob knows that his time is short, but God's covenant will endure through his descendants. By recounting these promises, Jacob sets the stage for the blessing that will unfold. 2. Adoption of Ephraim and Manasseh, verses 5 to 7. The central action that follows is Jacob's decision to adopt Joseph's sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, as his own. In a striking declaration, Jacob says to Joseph, "Now your two sons, who were born to you in the land of Egypt before I came to you in Egypt, are mine. Ephraim and Manasseh shall be mine, as Reuben and Simeon are." This adoption is highly significant in the ancient context of inheritance. In effect, Jacob is elevating these two grandsons to the status of his own sons, placing them on equal footing with his biological children. Ephraim and Manasseh will now be considered tribal heads alongside Jacob's sons, giving Joseph's lineage a double portion of the inheritance. This decision reflects Jacob's love for Joseph and the favor he seeks to bestow upon him, compensating for the years of separation and hardship Joseph endured. Jacob's action also points to the importance of lineage in the fulfillment of God's promises. By adopting these two sons, Jacob ensures that Joseph's line is integrated into the future of Israel, despite Joseph's Egyptian ties. He effectively redeems the time that Joseph spent in a foreign land by ensuring that Joseph's descendants remain firmly within the covenantal line. Jacob then reminisces about the death of Rachel, Joseph's mother, as if to explain his emotional motivation for this act. Rachel had died prematurely, just outside of Bethlehem, and Jacob's adoption of Ephraim and Manasseh may be seen as a way of honoring her memory and ensuring that her lineage would have a special place among the tribes of Israel. 3. Jacob's blessing of Joseph's sons, verses 8 to 16. In the following verses, Jacob formally blesses Ephraim and Manasseh. However, this blessing is far from ordinary. It carries deep prophetic and spiritual significance. The scene begins with Jacob's physical weakness and failing eyesight, which mirrors a similar scene in Jacob's youth when his father Isaac, blind and near death, mistakenly gave him, Jacob, the blessing meant for Esau. This sets the reader up to expect something momentous. Joseph brings his two sons near to Jacob, who is overcome with emotion. He reflects on how he never expected to see Joseph again after his presumed death, and now, not only has he seen Joseph, but also Joseph's children. This moment of joy and gratitude expresses Jacob's deep sense of God's providence in his life. As the time comes for the blessing, Joseph positions his sons deliberately. Manasseh, the elder, at Jacob's right hand, the hand of greater blessing, and Ephraim, the younger, at Jacob's left. In the patriarchal tradition, the firstborn would typically receive the greater blessing, as the firstborn son had special rights and privileges. However, in a surprising turn, Jacob crosses his hands, placing his right hand on Ephraim's head and his left on Manasseh's. This deliberate gesture foreshadows the reversal of the natural order of things. Jacob begins his blessing by invoking the God of his fathers, Abraham and Isaac, and the God who has shepherded him throughout his life. He asks for the angel who redeemed him from all harm to bless the boys and prays that they will grow into a multitude upon the earth. This blessing ties Ephraim and Manasseh directly to the patriarchal line, ensuring that they will be part of the fulfillment of God's covenant promises. 4. The reversal of the blessing, verses 17 to 20. When Joseph sees that Jacob has placed his right hand on Ephraim, the younger son, he is displeased. He tries to correct his father, thinking that Jacob's poor eyesight has led him to make a mistake. Joseph attempts to switch Jacob's hands so that Manasseh, the firstborn, will receive the greater blessing. But Jacob refuses, saying, "I know, my son, I know. He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great. Nevertheless, his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his descendants shall become a multitude of nations." Here, Jacob's prophetic insight becomes evident. Just as Jacob himself, the younger of Isaac's sons, was chosen over Esau to receive the blessing, so too is Ephraim chosen over Manasseh. This reversal of the expected order highlights a recurring theme in the biblical narrative. God often chooses the younger, the weaker, or the less expected person to carry out his purposes. It reflects the idea that God's ways are not bound by human customs or expectations. Jacob's declaration that Ephraim will become greater than Manasseh finds fulfillment later in the history of Israel. The tribe of Ephraim becomes one of the most prominent and influential tribes in the northern kingdom of Israel, often representing the entire northern kingdom in biblical texts. Meanwhile, the tribe of Manasseh, though also important, does not achieve the same level of prominence. Jacob concludes by invoking a blessing that will become a traditional saying in Israel. "By you Israel will pronounce blessings, saying, God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh." This phrase indicates that the two brothers will be held up as models of divine favor and blessing for future generations. 5. Jacob's final words to Joseph, verses 21 to 22. The chapter closes with Jacob's final words to Joseph. He acknowledges that his death is near, but he reassures Joseph that God will be with him and will eventually bring him and his descendants back to the land of their fathers. This promise anticipates the eventual exodus of the Israelites from Egypt and their return to the Promised Land. Jacob also gives Joseph an extra portion of land, one mountain slope, or one portion more than your brothers, which he says he took from the Amorites with his sword and bow. This extra portion serves as a symbol of Jacob's special favor toward Joseph, further elevating his status among the brothers. This final bequest of land, though briefly mentioned, carries significant weight in the context of the covenant. It represents the physical inheritance of the Promised Land, which will become central to the identity and destiny of the Israelite people. Themes and significance of Genesis 48. Covenantal continuity. The central theme of Genesis 48 is the transmission of God's covenant promises from one generation to the next. Jacob, as the bearer of the covenant, passes on the blessing to Joseph's sons, ensuring that the line of promise continues through his descendants. This act reinforces the importance of family and lineage in the fulfillment of God's redemptive plan. The reversal of human expectations. A key aspect of this chapter is the reversal of expectations regarding the firstborn. By blessing Ephraim over Manasseh, Jacob once again demonstrates that God's purposes often defy human customs. This theme is seen throughout the Bible, where God chooses unlikely individuals to carry out his will. Divine providence. Jacob's reflections on his life and God's guidance throughout his journey highlight the theme of divine providence. Despite the hardships he faced, Jacob recognizes that God has been his shepherd, guiding and protecting him. This sense of providence extends to his blessing of Ephraim and Manasseh, as Jacob trusts that God will continue to fulfill his promises through them. Please subscribe my YouTube channel. I hope you like this video. Thank you.